Hello and welcome to Bangalore International Centre's very own podcast, BIC Talks. Bangalore International Centre is a platform for informed conversations, exchange of ideas, and a space for arts and culture. BIC Talks brings the essence of all that the physical space stands for and more to your doorstep.
Hi and welcome to BIC Talks. I'm Pavan Srinath. It's been over 5 years since the 100 Smart Cities mission was launched across India. Instead of going macro and giving a grand judgment on whether the mission has been successful or not, we will narrow in on one city, Chennai, and look at how the Smart City project has evolved and contributed to that city. Our guest today, Raj Cherubal, is the CEO of the Chennai Smart City Limited, a special purpose vehicle or SPV that was launched to house the smart city projects in Chennai. Raj is that rare person who's not from the government system of bureaucracy and yet has been appointed as its CEO. Previously, Raj was Director of Projects at Chennai City Connect. Also joining me in this discussion is V. Ravichandar.
Do listen to our conversation till the end. And don't miss a reading by Ranjan Kamath of his poem Alone or Lonely at the end of this podcast. Raj, were you surprised to be the first CEO of a smart city SPV or project in Chennai who's not from the government and the IAS system?
The short answer is yes and no. And yes, of course, because this gigantic project, it's a pretty amazing opportunity. So somebody being selected from outside is obviously a surprise, because many of the officials had decided that they needed somebody who had the experience with the system and understanding of the projects, so that there'll be some focus and delivery. Otherwise, what happens is people get distracted, they get transferred, flood or some other bigger issue may pop up and they have to focus on that. So I think the system had decided that, some of the very influential and thinking officials had decided that they'll get somebody from the outside. And I was one of the natural choices for this job.
So Raj, this is Ravi here, and thank you for doing this. So, you had a past history post your physics and graduation. You were always interested in public policy. You did stints in Center for Civil Society, if I remember right, and then with the Chennai City Connect. So can you just walk us through your previous decadal experience of working with government in the past, which in a sense I also feel that helped Chennai decide that we could get somebody from outside to be the CEO of the Smart City project?
The beginning of this it's a very simple thing. This is not an entry-level job, okay? And any government job is not an entry-level job, not because of the expertise alone, because like in any profession, you need a network, right? You need to know which department does what, which building is where, and and more complicated things, who supports the ideas, who doesn't, what are the past histories of a particular idea or a project, and so on. So I think this is not an entry-level job. So luckily for me, I worked in Center for Civil Society, and where there we worked on various market-based systems and market-based solution to poverty, street vendor issue, which are very relevant to the city. Then almost miraculously, I ended up working for Chennai City Connect. And looking back, one of the big contributions of City Connect is basically creating that network. So it's not like we had great expertise in every subject. It's that we created a network of people inside the government and outside the government.
Raj, if I can come in here, help our listener understand what was the essential idea of City Connect. What was City Connect bringing to the table in city governance and administration?
So it's like this. So think of any city. Look at Paris, look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong has had probably 50 to 60, 70 years. Singapore has had a lot of time. Maybe Paris had 300, 400 years, right? So they've had discussion, debates, should a footpath be 6-inch high or 1 meter high, and so on and so forth. Yeah, whether it should be plastic or should it be concrete? All kinds of democratic or not debate has happened in those cities forever. And our cities are just starting to have those debates, and that too in a very, very chaotic environment. So City Connect's idea was that 2-3 ideas. One, there is a lot of people from the industry who are sitting on the sideline and complaining that this or that is not there in the city, or our city doesn't have transport system or a better planning ability and so on. So the idea was that can we bring in industry people into this whole network, help the city without any expectation in return. We are not in this for a tender or a contract or anything like that. Purely voluntary, purely NGO mode, bring industry and their expertise and their funds to help the city build capacity. And what actually happened, looking back, is that these are massive projects. It cannot be done by one man, one woman, or one NGO and so on, or even a one very influential or a very well-meaning official. It takes a gigantic network. And what we realized is that over the last 10 years or so, what we have actually done is create that network.
So this made you, as you mentioned, a natural candidate as a potential CEO of Chennai Smart City. Specifically, was there one or two projects that you drove in Chennai City Connect, which became the nucleus project for Chennai Smart City?
Two parts to it. One, for example, long back when we were piloting certain footpath ideas and so on, what we did was we spoke to the government and said, let's step back a bit and let's take one place. Let's say, for example, a T Nagar. At least on paper, let's get experts and do a fantasy scenario, right? What would T Nagar look like if we benchmark it to let's say Hong Kong? So we got in architects, we got in consultants, we got local stakeholders and said, okay, what are the criteria? It could be transport, it could be water and so on. And out of that came something called the T Nagar redevelopment plan. The government was very excited about this idea. And the idea was to inspire the public, inspire the officials, inspire NGOs to say, look, these are all possible because some other cities have done it. And so when 2015, the proposal for Smart City came about, T Nagar redevelopment plan report became very much part of that proposal. So even the system understood that many of the ideas that has been discussed for a long time is going to be part of the Smart City. And very importantly, along with ITTP, CARET and so on, so we had started off some projects with the government. One was the pedestrian plaza, which was basically taking a part of T Nagar and saying, let's reimagine this as a public space. Then very importantly, we realized parking management, citywide parking management is an extremely important piece, not only for bringing discipline on the road, but also for revenue. Cycle sharing being another, even I was skeptical that will it work or not. Then very importantly, Chennai being a flood prone and a drought prone area, we had worked with EFI and CARE, two environment NGOs, to do some water body restoration. So with CARE, for example, we did some amazing work, Palikarne restoration, adaptive management plan and so on. And with EFI, we took basically a garbage dump, which turned out to be like a big water body, and restored it to the original sense to a large extent. So these were pretty surprising projects. Some of them succeeded. Some of them got stuck, like Plaza, for example, got stuck. So all these projects had started, stalled, stopped, up and down. And then suddenly, when the Smart City came, all this was part of the Smart City projects. And not only the part of the Smart City project, but also with money and a lot of pressure to get going. So it was almost like a good, perfect storm.
So Raj, you were earlier playing a role which I would call more advisory in nature, though it was pro bono advisory, saying we could do these things. And now suddenly you're in the executive CEO seat where it is possible to implement. You mentioned the T Nagar pedestrian plaza and that whole redevelopment project. You mentioned the water body development and Palikarne, etc. So now you're on the executive side where you can take forward some of these initiatives that you were part of from the outside. What was that experience like, and what changed, or what was your learning when you were on the executive side of the same project?
See, initially, I think it was like, as the Americans say, drinking from a fire hose, because suddenly the entire network, like I keep saying, the network is very important. The entire network talks and pilots and so on and so forth, so much excitement. And when finally you're supposed to start something, you realize now the whole world is watching kind of feeling, right? All these days you talked about something and you're supposed to deliver. Problem is that when you actually have to execute, that's when it becomes almost like herding cats and sheeps, where there's no data. So the DPR may not be complete. There are permission cycles. There are departments which need to agree and go along. So I think initially it was very difficult for the engineers, for myself, everybody, because suddenly instead of simply talking, you're now expected to go and actually start the work on the ground. Getting to on the ground, initially at least, it was very, very frustrating because the processes didn't exist. So there's confusion about there is the Corporation of Chennai, there is the Smart City SPV, there are two different file systems, and so on and so forth. I can go on and on about this, but the point is the lack of processes or the lack of understanding of processes on our side, the requirements from, let's say, Smart City Mission, the fact that SPV is a Companies Act kind of a company rather than a government department. So that complicates matters because of completely different set of auditing and file keeping and so on. So not only the administration of day-to-day stuff becomes a problem, the project becomes frustrating because, you're supposed to, let's say, for example, implement parking management, right? Suddenly you realize that you don't have enough data to put the tender together. And if you ask the consultant how long that will take, he will say, look, it will take you 6 months to collect data and then another 6 months to do something. And all this ends up becoming extremely frustrating. So I think managing that fluid, chaotic situation was a once in a lifetime experience. But thanks to the support of engineers, corporation commissioners, and deputy commissioners, and so on, because everybody realizes this is a great opportunity for us to get something done. However painful it was, I think the cooperation was amazing. And I keep telling people, I mean, the entire system was functioning towards one goal, no matter how chaotic it was. That, I think, is what made some of these projects possible. Otherwise, call it smart city, call it green city, it doesn't matter what you call it. It would have been near impossible to get things done. Somehow, everybody focusing on their own work and having a clear, at least common goal, I think that made a huge difference in achieving the targets.
Raj, so you took up the role in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, right? I know how difficult the journey must have been, but could you maybe give us one or two examples of what has been reasonably successful so far, what you've been able to achieve so far, and what you felt happy about so far?
So I think, ultimately what I keep saying is that what is important is not the SPV of, let's say, the smart city. It is the Corporation of Chennai. See, in any city, Paris or London, the mayor, the commissioner, that infrastructure has been around even in Chennai for, I think, many, many decades, many centuries. So ultimately, the idea is that to make those systems function, right? And now the best part is that whether we achieve this project or that project, you can see that the system realizes these kinds of projects can be done. So last November was a turning point for us when the pedestrian plaza was inaugurated. It was a tough project because, first of all, it goes against the grain of building flyovers and, giving importance to car. Because the general idea is that unless you have plenty of cars coming to a place, businesses won't do well. So this idea of bigger sidewalks compared to the road, etc., everything is a controversy. And very importantly, pedestrian plaza is not simply pedestrian plaza. It's actually a culmination of many different projects in one place. Not only because it was Tinagar, but even in that 1 kilometer, 1.4 kilometer area, you'll see that there's a pedestrian plaza. There's almost 10-15 years, shopkeepers have been demanding for a multi-level car park, which is almost done right now. Ultra sophisticated parking management system, which will be one of the largest in the country, if not the world. When it's already started, it'll bring in not only discipline, but also a lot of revenue for the city. Then we had all kinds of infrastructure for the plaza. So for example, ducting, etc., that we learned from Pune, Bangalore, and so on. The typical pet peeve of the city is that, you build something and then you're going to dig it up tomorrow morning. So to prevent that, we have electricity ducting and OFC ducting and so on. Then there is the whole cycle sharing piece to it. There are 3-4 stations there where people ride around and people find it very exciting. All the stock of intermodal connectivities where somebody can come in a metro rail, they get into their bike and come to the plaza. So actually it turned out to be a culmination of a lot of different very, very critical pieces that we all talk about and we all want to happen. Actually happened in this place. And then in the next few days, few months, we will have a smart metering of that area. Many more roads will become beautifully done. A lot of parks have come up. Last November or so was a real joyful moment, the day when the Honorable Chief Minister inaugurated the pedestrian plaza, and the response was just stunning. I mean, just amazing how people responded. That people would take pictures and send it to their family or friends abroad and ask, can you guess where this is? And people will say, is it London? Is it Paris? Sure, Chennai hasn't become London or Paris, but at least for that 1 kilometer stretch, people are seriously excited. And very importantly, my personal thinking has always been anybody can put concrete, anybody can put wood and plastic. But the point is the morale of the city, morale of the system, the fact that how do we go from Sar panna mudiyadhu, we cannot do these kinds of things in India, to saying that yes, why not? If we can do 1 kilometer, we can do 10 or 100 or 1,000. I think that shift in the last 3 years has happened in the system.
So Raj, first thing, congratulations on that whole T Nagar redevelopment of that area. Even if it's 1.4 kilometers, as you mentioned, it acts as a powerful demonstration effect of what is possible. You mentioned that. I'm curious about one more thing here, which is how does these things get done? You will have to build consensus and work with multiple government authorities to pull this together. Share with us your experience of getting the other government departments on board, because everything in our cities is multi-agency. And while you may have some convening power, you're also from outside the system. So how did that happen, and any learnings in terms of building such consensus across agencies?
See, I think this is a very important point I'm going to make. That is, the SPV is not important. Okay. The city is important. City's existing institutions are important. And our goal should be to fix those institutions and add more institutions, obviously, like a Kumta, which will do the intermodal connection.
Raj, if I can come in there, Kumta for our listeners would be the Chennai Unified
Metropolitan Transport Authority. Basically, the point is that there are multiple agencies in any city in the world. Yeah. So there are organizations like the Transport for London or the LTA in Singapore, Land Transport Authority in Singapore, which sits on top of it, does the common planning, which the independent individual institutions may not do. Corporation may say, look, why should I go do something for the MTC? Or MTC, the bus company, may say, look, I can only run buses. I can't go tell highway to do something, and so on. So every city on earth has that coordination problem and common plan problem. And obviously, that is what is missing in Indian city. And if I may say, in some very, very limited way, what the Smart City project did was actually do that common planning. So whether it's a plaza or any other project, like you said, there's always multiple departments. So in a plaza, for example, we had to work with the electricity department to move all the electricity boxes in a line and so on. We had to work with the metro water people because their pipes need to be changed or rider sewage needs to be given. And the corporation won't have any authority to go and do their work, obviously. We have to work with the traffic police. Interestingly, this is why I said the network matters. The people who set up the SPV concept in Tamil Nadu had a very interesting idea that SPV's job is not to go now take over and do Corporation of Chennai's job. Corporation of Chennai is thousands of employees and engineer kind of an organization. There is no way one CEO and two engineers can go and replicate all that. So the Chennai, it's been set up, or Tamil Nadu has been set up in a way that it is first and foremost a funding agency. But very importantly, it also tries to coordinate and help plan and so on. Somehow it worked in Chennai. So our board has people from municipal administration department, electricity department, police, and so on. So when the SPV board says, yes, go ahead and do it, it's as good as the Tamil Nadu government saying, yes, go ahead and do it.
And I think that's a great insight, that we need to work through existing institutional frameworks to get many of these things done and not come with a Rambo-like attitude from outside and try to do these kind of things. I think that's a great insight. Now, you mentioned T Nagar redevelopment exercise as well as the 210 water body restoration as being two major successes, and that's no mean feat. What about setbacks? I mean, were there projects that you wanted to do, but the place is still not ready for doing those kind of projects? For instance, we were actually looking to Chennai, to what you mentioned earlier, the Chennai Urban Mobility Transport Authority, Kumta. That has really not been effective as yet. And also, I think you were keen on cycle areas in Anna Nagar and some other places. They haven't taken off. So tell us about things that were difficult to pull off and why were they difficult?
Actually, I'll put it another way. So, for example, right now, the World Bank, I don't think any other city in India at least is participating in such a way. World Bank is going to get into a so-called city partnership with Chennai, which will be basically multiplying a lot of the project that Chennai has done, metro water, smart city projects, etc., multiplying and scaling it across the city. And one of the pieces, very critical piece in that is going to be the Kumta. So yes, Kumta hasn't happened today. It's there, but it's not very effective. But good way of looking at it is that because of the success of these projects, the World Bank and other officials have figured out that Chennai could be one place where you could actually scale it across the city. So as we speak, just to give you an example, from the Pedestrian Plaza example, we have actually taken up 110 or so kilometers in 6 packages. And we have been working with architects and consultants to replicate all these works in 6 other places in the city. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are a lot of other projects in the pipeline. But the point is, system realizes that a pilot became a big project, and now big project needs to be multiplied. And it is not simply a linear scale, right? You need to create many more layers for that scaling to happen, which means you need to have a Kumta, we need to have planning mechanisms, and you need to have a secretariat, working functional secretariat inside the Kumta to do that coordination and planning. All these things are moving forward, and I would think it is because of a lot of the successful projects that Chennai has been doing for some time, whether it is Smart City project or various other department projects. All that is culminating, and already many other massive projects are in the pipeline.
So that's good to hear, Raj. So essentially, given that the smart city budgets per se are a very, very small, I think maybe 1% of what a city might actually need, what I hear you say is that through these demonstration projects, these pilot projects, and a pathway to scale, it's possible that the city benefits on a scale basis of stuff that the smart city SPV starts doing at a much smaller scale. Would my reading be right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, from what I understood from the beginning, right, one of the very often said the objective of Smart City Mission is to say, it's not that Chennai or a Bangalore will become an amazing place just because somebody gave us 1,000 crore. That is just a catalyst. And the whole idea was to start thinking not just in concrete and steel term, but also in the financing, the processes of raising funds. How do you raise funds, different kinds of funds for different kinds of projects and so on, and become a city like many of the advanced cities. So shouldn't be always based on simply getting a loan from somebody or, grant from center or state. So even that process has started in Chennai. So for example, the current commissioner is very, very dynamic person who realizes that we cannot simply depend on the current model of financing. So for example, parking management is expected to bring in a lot of money, badly needed money. So, and very importantly, if you see, Chennai Corporation has a bunch of land sitting around here and there, and most of the buildings will be really old, falling apart, getting very low rent and so on. These are actually potential gold mines. So in every seminar, I'm sure you and I have talked about Hong Kong and value capture. It's pretty much exactly what we are trying to do now. So for example, the Broadway, which is a mega piece of land in the north of Chennai, with the DPR for the report for that is done, and we hopefully should be moving to the PPP tendering stage. That should bring in tremendous amount of capital and OPEX money from the project if it takes off and succeeds. And that could again become a terrific model to be replicated across Chennai and bring in money. Then, for example, in a smaller way, many of our water bodies were fixed through CSR funds. So what I realize is that there's a lot of CSR money out there, but people have difficulty connecting the project to that money and so on. So we actually put together a very simple process by which, if you're interested in water body restoration, you can link up with an NGO and bring the money to the city and fix the water body. So my point is, whether it is bonds, whether it is value capture, whether it is CSR funds, etc., our cities are, maybe in terrible financial shape right now. Even before things were in very rosy. So we have to look for other ways of funding and not just think of the 1,000 crores as a project, as a end in all. But 1,000 crore was actually a tremendous catalyst if it is used well, because the projects that I talked about were actually strategic building blocks of a bigger picture. You do parking here, you do parking everywhere. You do cycle sharing in one place, you do cycle sharing across the city. Pedestrian plaza, you multiply it, and so on and so forth, right? So I think the money and the pressure from the center and the state government to get these projects going and finish it on time, that I think was a tremendous help.
In fact, Raj, you make a very important point, and I would actually say it is beyond just Chennai city, because cities are watching each other and also learning from one another. So actually the project done in Chennai could well be replicated somewhere else in the country.
In fact, the other way around also. So like I told you earlier, when we were doing the plaza, we had only done a bunch of footpaths till then, not as sophisticated a project as the plaza. So we immediately came to Bangalore, looked at the tender show. We went to Pune, and Pune has done amazing work there. And obviously some other cities where they've done pretty good work in terms of ducting and landscaping and public space and so on. So, and that has a tremendous morale boost for our own engineers, city engineers, because it's one thing to hear theory and color pictures. It's another thing to hear the practicality of it from another Indian city. So we did learn a lot. And then now, of course, there are people who come to Chennai and, look around Plaza or the water body restoration or various other projects and learn from us. And I'm sure we've learned a lot from each other in the Tamil Nadu context itself. Vellore is a very big pioneer in solid waste management, for example.
So Raj, now that we have some of these projects in Chennai and elsewhere that people can look at and see that it's possible, how do you imagine new projects in this world where we are grappling with an epidemic and we will not stop grappling with an epidemic for the coming years? Do we need to start imagining new projects as well? Because, conventionally when we think of health problems, they're very rural, right? Because they're associated with poverty, with nutrition and so on. But these are infectious diseases that are finally becoming more important for us. So, and cities will play a very key role in managing these in pandemics. So how do you see this changing?
See, I think, again, the answer is yes and no. Yes, some things will dramatically change. And obviously, otherwise we will be foolish not to, relook at the way we do things. But also I don't know if it's a good part or bad, but another way of looking at this is, imagine this is December 2019. Chennai or Bangalore had a long list of problems to solve, long list of solutions, long list of discussions. So imagine if this was December, we haven't achieved all those goals, by the way, right? And ask yourself why this emphasis on 220 water body restoration, why is it considered a big success, etc. Is because we had a gigantic flood in 2015. And after the flood, I think the city woke up and everybody from top to bottom realized that we cannot continue like this. We have to make a change. And luckily, the official machinery, the publics, NGOs all got together and started saying, let's do this. Let's do something about it. As we speak, there's a gigantic network of Corporation of Chennai is implementing a massive network of stormwater drains. And we can show you that, because of that, a lot of the flooding and waterlogging has actually pretty much disappeared in those areas and so on and so forth. Okay, the point I'm trying to make is that the past crisis, past problems and past various big time crises have not gone away. It's still there with us. We still will be a polluted city when the lockdown is over. We still will be congested. So we need to do those projects and planning anyway. But like I said, it's in a way it gets more complicated because of the pandemic, because of climate change. That is the elephant in the room. But I see this as a good opportunity to leapfrog. So we may not have the time to 50 years, 100 years to, think like other cities did. But luckily for us, as we do the planning and the concrete and the steel, we can also use modern technology. So for example, a typical problem in India is lack of data. So we do wrong things in the wrong way. Now it's easier and easier to collect data. It's easier and easier to verify data. You can do drones, you can do IoTs, you can do satellites. And the question of, for example, how if you fix a water body, how are you going to maintain it? Now there are technologies like a drone or a satellite by which you can do analytics and keep track of it. So a lot of the frustrations we had in, let's say, 2019 December still exist, and it's gotten more complicated. But I think we have a golden opportunity to leapfrog, and not only using traditional planning and stakeholder consultation and those kinds of tools that we have anywhere in the city, anywhere in the world, but also to use modern technology to start putting advanced systems in place.
Raj, here I have a pet peeve that a lot of what we do in our cities is actually health expenditure. When we look at stormwater drains and, good drainage, that's actually a health expenditure, because if we don't do that well, that leads to more mosquitoes, more dengue, more infectious diseases and more health burden. But the health conversation stops with healthcare. At best extends to water supply and sanitation, rarely extends to city drainage. Even the idea of a redevelopment of a plaza and a wide footpath where people can go in both directions comfortably without brushing against each other is actually great in a epidemic scenario, right? Because you're not being congested. And a lot of this congestion is a false congestion. It's not that we are overcrowded. It's because we have not planned things properly. So, and my one takeaway from what you said was that while our problems are growing and our solutions may not keep up, maybe a crisis and the reflection after a crisis allows our solutions to scale as quickly as the problems.
And I would just quickly add, I'm a big believer in 80-20 rule because, like I said, we cannot solve all the potholes of the city overnight. We cannot solve all the mosquitoes overnight. But what we have been talking about in Chennai for some time, and it's very looking more and more interesting around the world, is that you can use data and analytics to get to some of these. So, for example, if you're the commissioner of Chennai, tomorrow is going to rain. Question we should be asking is, which are the top 100 potholes the day after tomorrow that needs to be fixed proactively so people don't complain, right? Or tell me today, for example, which are the top 1,000 potholes of Chennai. If you fix it, people should be amazed that the roads are very nice, and so on and so forth. So today, if it's going to rain, where is the mosquito going to come from tomorrow? So we don't go randomly spraying stuff all over the place. We just target and spray. So the possibilities are endless, especially for a resource-starved, developing country like us, where we don't have the resources to completely redo everything under the sun. We just don't have time, energy, money, planning capabilities, and so on. So what I'm trying to say is that let us use, like we leapfrogged using smartphones, where from a black rotary phone and copper wire, we jump to a smartphone, mobile phone, where even now the poor can afford mobility, telecommunication, and their lives are better off because of that. And we didn't take the traditional, copper wire route. What is the equivalence of that in governance?
Thanks, Raj. And we hope that we will not go back to a business as usual model post the COVID crisis. We jumpstart some of the solutions. My final question to you, Raj, because we started with you being one of the first non-government officers in a government smart city project, SPV. What are your main lessons or the insights that you would provide future people like yourselves who are planning to do some kind of a lateral shift to some positions in government as and when it becomes possible? What would your advice be to such individuals?
So I get this question a lot, how do I get your job kind of question. So I would say first, respect the institution you're trying to join, right? As an example, I wouldn't aspire to suddenly one day walk into, let's say, nearby hospital and say, make me a surgeon. I wouldn't walk into an accounting company and say, hey, make me an accountant. I'll just do it. It looks pretty easy. So I think more than the maybe narrow knowledge we may have, I think any profession takes experience, network, who to talk to, who's who, and so on and so forth, to get the job done. I mean, not for the sake of hanging around with officials, but the point is your objective is what? To maybe improve public transport in the city or water body in the city. Your objective is a noble goal. But to get there, in any profession, you have to go through either formal training in school, which doesn't happen in India or pretty much anywhere in the world. India especially, it doesn't happen. So I would say, first of all, realize that organization, in this case, the government, is a very different institution with there's a reason why government is the way it is, right? It cannot function like a private company. So just because I am a big guy in, let's say, a private company doesn't mean it's transferable. Some are transferable, obviously. Take it very seriously that there are unique things that is applicable to government. Government is a very different institution. It has democracy to deal with. It has public to deal with, and so on and so forth, which means you have, if you're a young man or woman, I would suggest right in your 20s, I think you need to start preparing for yourself, no matter what industry you are in. You need to have some understanding of various kinds of public policy, whether it's economics, whether it is gender issue, sociology, and don't dismiss anything. Don't be a pro vendor, a street vendor, or an anti-street vendor. The fact that millions of people are street vendor, for example, is a reality in India. So the question becomes, is that a good thing, bad thing? Study about it. Don't make a sudden jump and say, get rid of all the vendor. So my point is, every topic becomes more and more complicated when you're looking at it from inside the government. So again, going back to the plaza. So do you allow vendors there or not is a high court decision. But in other parts of the city, the vendors need to be part of urban fabric and the urban planning. But in traditional urban planning, you'll never hear that concept, right? So you need to have some understanding of economics, understanding of sociology, the gender issue, which is very, very critical from so many point of view. child safety, or what does the police do? So even if you're not an expert, I think try to kind of understand the various things, various ideas that government deals with. Also, absolutely importantly, you need to join an organization like a City Connect, where you're not simply sitting outside and giving ideas. You're actually working with the system. I really love that point about City Connect, was that once you are working with the system, then you're part of the system. You can't then go back and complain that, government is not doing this or that. You are part of the system. You're in it for the long run. You have to put up with all the good and bad and ugly that comes along with the job. But like in any profession, you have to get yourself trained for minimum of 3-4 years before you can actually say, yes, give me that opportunity and I'll be able to do it. Because like I said earlier, this is not an entry-level job. And if you're really interested in making a change, you really need to come here, come doing your homework and not waste other officials' time and space.
Raj, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you on BIC Talks.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you for staying with us till the end. And now, here's Ranjan Kamath with Alone or Lonely.
Alone or lonely? When am I alone and when am I lonely? Me has oft asked I closely. Should I feel alone or lonely in outer space if I were to leave behind the human race? Should I feel alone or lonely in the universe when my last left kin journeys in a hearse? Should I feel alone or lonely in solitary confined till my crimes against the state are determined? Should I feel alone or lonely when my work creative finds no applause? No one appreciative? Should I feel alone or lonely whilst we're at supper? You're on your cell phone. Our food turns to rubber. Should I feel alone or lonely? We've been mates since school, but now your ideology thinks me quite the fool. Should I feel alone or lonely, treated like the plague by godsends exploiting friendship for their selfish ends? Should I feel alone or lonely when my mail or call to you seems trifling, replied with silence, quite baffling? Should I feel alone or lonely when my posts find no like, while your food porn in times of famine hits 1 million strikes? Should I feel alone or lonely that I'm selfie shy, cause the reality I choose not to falsify? I replies to me, of boredom or rock bottom I've no fear as long as with me you're here. You would alone or lonely be if I were uncongenial company.
This episode of BIC Talks has Gaurav Krishna as our sound engineer, with support from S. Sarvanaraj and Lekha Naidu. And the accompanying episode artwork was made by Chandni Venkataraman.
Thank you for listening to this episode of BIC Talks. This podcast can be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org, as well as on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in for new episodes every week, and do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages to stay informed on our latest updates.